Look at this.
Yeah.
What is that?
I'm gonna call the meeting to order. And it looks like we have everybody here who's on the planning commission.
Except
Except for Mr. Light.
Except for Mr. Light, who's, I think, attending by,
He might. He has the opportunity.
he may be zooming in. Let's stand and do the pledge of allegiance.
So, board, do you want to come in now and just sit quietly while they handle their business, or do you want to wait until they go through the business?
Let's not get in the way of them during their business at the moment.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Then could I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
I have a question.
And then,
Good discussion?
any discussion?
Yeah,
Yes.
discussion. Are we gonna incorporate them in early so they can go, or is that the end, or?
I
That's
think
all.
what we're gonna do is run through through the Bresnan Wendy request.
I think the idea is
And
for you to
then
finish your public
switch.
hearing before.
Okay, okay. All right.
That was better said. Thank you. Thank you. The minutes. Any comments about the minutes? I have just a few corrections. Part of it is, I know this is really good. I was going to rewrite some, but on the motion for the tenant house, yeah, there were, in fact, 4 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstained. So I wanted to make that correction. Then, in the part under the discussion, this is just, I had trouble reading it, but the commission discussed removing the termination upon sale stipulation, comma, if this could be, then I was going to change it, seen as a precedent, and how this impacted the amendment made to the county code requiring 2 years of ownership before permitting a tourist home. It's just editing. Yeah, it didn't seem all that clear. I don't know if anybody agrees with that.
You're talking about what we just said there.
Yeah, the commission, starting with the commission. It would just seem, when I was reading it through, I couldn't quite understand it. It doesn't change the meaning, it's just,
Would this sound more correct? Upon sales stipulation, comma, this could set a precedent and conflict with the amendment made to the county code of not allowing a piece of property to be used as a tourist home for 2 years.
We can't hear.
sorry. I think that'll work, okay. So, commission discussed termination upon sale stipulation. This could be,
So maybe this sounds more correct to what we discussed. The commission discussed removing the termination upon sale stipulation, comma, removing if. This could set a precedent and conflict with the amendment made to the county code of not allowing a piece of property to be used as a tourist home for 2 years once purchased. Is that more correct than what we?
Okay, it makes more sense.
Because that's what we.
So I would accept that. So we have two amendments, Al's rewording, and also the motion carried by 4 votes, with one person abstaining and the other opposing the motion. So, would anybody want to move the minutes with those amendments?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, and then we're going to have the public hearing on special exception number 260102, hit, which is more than one dwelling per tract of land.
That's not the right one.
It's not hit, it's this one. It's special use 260601, Bresnan and Canby, sorry. Tax map 39-5, more than one dwelling per parcel or tract of land. Thank you. Would you, thank you.
Yes, hi. I'm Peter Bresnan.
Oh, great, nice to see you.
Keep asking people.
They moved it on there.
Oh.
Good evening.
Would you tee it up? Thank you.
I'm Peter Bresnan. I'm in the Stonewall District. And first of all, I'll just thank you for hearing our application. I really appreciate it. My wife Annie and I live in what everyone around here calls Millie's cabin. I guess it's not ours, it's still hers. We would like to build a small guest home of 1 story, 1 bedroom. Our plan is to have Jim Racer help us with that. He's busy until next year.
Yeah.
But we hope to get started next year. There's 2 reasons we want to do this. The first one is Millie's cabin is lovely, but it's 1 bedroom. And if we really want to have any guests come, someone needs to be up in the loft where there's no restroom and walk down the scary stairs in the dark. The other reason is, my wife and I, as we get older, might really prefer to live in a place on 1 floor. So that's really all we have in mind. Our only neighbor is Eldon Farms. I did communicate with John Janot about that, and of course he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they had no objection. The truth is, no one is ever going to see this at all from the road, or unless they come up our long driveway and visit. I don't think it's going to have any impact on traffic or scenery or otherwise. I am unfamiliar with this process. This is the first planning commission meeting I've been to, so I hope our application was sufficient, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you might have or provide any information that you're interested in. But again, mostly I just wanted to thank you for giving us the time.
Thank you. We'll open it for a public hearing.
Do you want me to?
Sure.
The special exception before you is by Mr. Bresnan and Ms. Canby, who own tax map number 39-5, which is located at 4228 Sperryville Pike. It's 66.8 acres. It is zoned conservation and agricultural. And they have applied to place another dwelling unit on their tract or parcel of land pursuant to 170-36A. Currently, there's 1 home on their property that's roughly 896 square feet. The applicants would like to construct another small home on their property for guests. Since this property is in a VOF open space easement, VOF did review the application and the proposed structure, and they have approved the request to construct a 340 square foot cabin, and I did verify 340 square foot cabin. VDOT commented that this doesn't produce any additional traffic, and they have no objections. The health department commented they currently have a septic system permit for the one-bedroom proposed cabin, and that there's an existing well that they propose to serve the new dwelling as well. Even though they don't have records for the well, they did suggest that the owners do a pump test to determine if there's enough water to serve both homes.
Okay. We go to public comment?
Yep.
I'd like to open it for public comment now. Yes.
Validate whether the telephone user is Mr. Light or not, and make sure he can properly join to the meeting if it is him.
Yes, sir. It is me. If you can hear
Okay.
me, I have found my way in.
Excellent. And you are participating for personal reasons from Maine, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Make sure that's in the minutes.
Hi there, Anita Ramos. I have one comment, major comment, which is about the water. It's, as mentioned, it's been recommended that they test the water to see if there's enough for the two buildings. We've been going through drought for numerous years. This house was supposedly built in 1740 and has had work done on it in some way, shape, or form, apparently in 1957, and who knows what else. Who knows what that well is like? It's probably a dug well. If 4 people show up for a weekend and use that water during a drought period, who knows what's going to happen? I think they really seriously need to look at that well and see if it needs improvement. It probably does. Yeah, maybe it's been working perfectly since 1740, but we don't know that. And I know places in this area that have dried up in past years that were alive and well springs back in the 1930s when we had a drought. So that's why I'm very concerned about that. So that's the major thing. And also the distance between these two buildings, I would make sure that it's not too far away from each other because it's an auxiliary building. And it's not a house, it's just a cabin. And the word house probably needs to get thrown out everywhere it gets used. Thank you.
Karen Hunt, Jackson District. I just want to offer a point of clarification. Guest house has a very specific meaning in our ordinance, and I know that in the application it's being referred to as that. We just want to be clear that this is essentially an ADU or additional unit. I just want to make that distinction. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, close the public hearing. Anybody else? Then do I close the public hearing? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up to the board for discussion. I believe, Mr. Jenner, that this is in your territory.
It actually, I think, is in Piedmont, but I'm very familiar with it. Yep, very close to the line. The one question I had was the question that was raised, the distance between the two buildings. I believe the ADU, which wouldn't apply here anyways, but that code is 500 feet or something.
It could apply. If it was within 200 feet, they could apply for that, but.
200, okay. Okay, so do you know how far that distance is? Are you planning 200 feet?
I actually was completely unaware of the issue involving 200 feet, so I don't know. I haven't measured it.
You know, when I went out there, I was trying to, it did seem like if it's halfway between the log building and your house, that it could easily be just 200 feet.
It may be a difference with that distinction.
Yeah.
So in many cases, that is a more restrictive use. It has to be within 200 feet of the home, and it has to be less than 1,200 square feet. Of course, these individuals have requested to have less than 1,200 square feet. Getting a special exception for a second dwelling on the parcel takes those restrictions off. It can be more than 200 feet, and it can be more than 1,200 square feet. And so it provides some flexibility for when they actually figure out if it's going to be 201 square feet away, it won't be a violation.
If you measured that halfway to that barn would be 200 feet, then I think it's going to be a little more than 200 feet.
But it's in the clearing, it's
It's
yeah.
in the only
Yeah.
place it
You're not
could
building
be.
up at the top of the mountain and or anything.
Or no, it's in the
Yeah.
clearing.
Or down along the highway, yeah.
And then, what do you know about the well?
Had the water tested about a year or two ago. And I was interested in both the water quality, which was found to be just fine, and also the water pressure, which was found to be just fine. I haven't had it tested with a view toward a second home, but I'm happy to do that. I think it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, because you don't want to run out of water when you're retired on that, living in that house probably. Any other questions? Mr. Sis?
Just to confirm, it's 347 square feet and not,
40. Yeah.
is there a loft or anything in this, or plan to be a loft in it?
No, just one story. We do have a draftsman who drafted something up, and his was more like 17 by 21 and a half feet, so it has grown slightly, but that's the range we're looking at.
And your septic is going to hook up to the existing septic, or?
No, that'll have to be new.
Okay.
Mrs. Sherwood?
I don't have any comments on the application, but I do want to say something about the fact that we are not in a drought. That's not a concern of mine right now.
Mr. Henry?
Just a couple little quick questions, just formalities. This nice little small house you're doing, does it have everything in it? Does it have like a real efficiency kitchen? Does it have a bathroom and a bedroom? Or are you just gonna kind of have a bedroom then, or living room and go over to the main house to, it's gonna have all those little things in it?
It's going to have all those little things in it, a kitchenette and a bathroom included.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess it's gonna kind of incorporate a use kind of with the other cabin too. You think you're probably gonna live in this one and maybe your family come and live in the old one? On weekends, whatever, or you're just gonna kind of circumvent, go from one to the other?
Well, no, the idea is my wife and I would stay in the main cabin, but if friends came to visit, they would stay in the new place, or one of our two daughters and their spouses came, they might stay in the guest house. So for now, it would really be a guest home, even though we technically might not meet that definition. Functionally, that's what it would be.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the well. I mean, you got 60-some acres here. If you have a bad well, you can drill a well, and you got the resources to drill a well. Your builder is fantastic. He knows all about country issues, and Mr. Racer, he's checked the water. I'm not at least at all concerned about the well, and you got plenty of land there. It's in the woods, so this whole thing is just really a formality for me. So thank you very much.
Anybody else?
I have a question for you on that. Are you and your wife currently staying in the cabin on a regular basis, or just coming?
I'm sorry, I had difficulty hearing you.
I got a cold, of course, but are you and your wife currently occupying Miller's cabin on a regular basis?
We are in Washington, D.C. a little more than we're out at Millie's Cabin. So we're registered voters in Washington, D.C., which means we have virtually no vote. But that's not really your question. We're probably here about 100 days a year. I come out every Thursday and play music, and that's one of the main things that draws me out here.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Light. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And again, I apologize for the inconvenience of not being there. But I just wanted to zero in on this, is it an ADU or not? If this were within 200 feet of the main house and this were coming in as an ADU, I would have zero reservations about it. As it is, it's a bit of a broader precedent possibly to me because they're not asking for the restricted ADU application, presumably because that distance is greater than 200 feet. So I do think it's a little bit more of a decision in that light, but I think what covers it for me is that this is protected by the VOF easement. I understand that, and maybe Michelle could elaborate on this, but I understand that they have the density available to them, that if this property weren't under easement, it would be potentially a divisible property. Not that we would want to encourage that, but in other cases where we've talked about multiple dwelling units on a single parcel, the sort of density and divisibility has been an issue. And to me, since this is not an ADU, it does not have that kind of dependency, it is a bit more of an intensive use. But because it is covered by the easement, and the easement and VOF has reviewed and approved this, I believe that is itself sufficiently protective. And on that basis, I would like to make a motion that we recommend approval of this application with the conditions specified and with the conditions of the substantive details of the application, and that we make that recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
So what is the substance and definitions of the application? I mean, anything specific there, Mr. Light? I mean, I don't think there was.
Well, the application itself, I don't recall if there. I mean, the other thing that was a little odd about this is the application seemed to have very little. It didn't even have the location of the property. So that also troubles me a little bit. So it's a good question.
The location, you mean of the proposed building? Because the location of
I think that's really what I'm getting at, that we are approving it on the basis of the proposed site, however that is specified, and we are not providing carte blanche, just do whatever you want, build a second house here anywhere at any scale. So that's really what I'm getting at, and I'm sorry, I know it's not clear to me how that location was specified in the application.
Okay.
Well, there was a map
Yeah.
included with the application that had an arrow to the area where the house was proposed to be built. So we did specify that in the application.
Yeah, and if you go up there, it seems like it would fit right into the current building envelope. There's a log building and.
So let me clarify my motion then, subject to the location and size, building size specified in the application.
And that's the motion?
Yes, that's my
Okay.
motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Deneau, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. And you'll get,
Goes right.
Mr. Light's vote.
oh, sorry, he made the motion.
Yeah.
Just asking.
No, do you vote yes? Mr. Light?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, moving right along. So now, we have a moment for public comment.
Before you do that, let's have the board
Go on,
convene.
You don't have to stay if you don't want to.
You guys can move here.
You can do whatever you want, but I want you to convene the meeting.
Join the group.
I'm just gonna stay put.
And then so Debbie will.
So usually I don't see it. I'm sitting next to it.
Yeah. I can transfer my, out.
Got it.
All right, at this time, I'd like to reconvene the Board of Supervisors for this joint meeting. And this is a continuation of the August 3rd board meeting.
If I could have somebody move and second to adopt the board agenda, then we can jump back over to the planning commission agenda.
I'll move that we adopt the Board of Supervisors agenda for this continuation of our August meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Congratulations.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
So, do I open the public comment? Okay, I'm going to open the public comment. Somebody wants to speak about the upcoming agenda or anything else? Feel free.
Karen Hunt, Jackson District. With regard to the firing range ordinance, in the definition, I'm wondering how we are defining the word sufficient with regard to height, width, and depth. What if the mound is natural and not man-made? What may seem obvious to one person may not be obvious to another. We reference structures and roads, but make no mention of any danger to other things like livestock, companion animals, vehicles, farm equipment, RVs, campers, boats, tents, etc. If projectiles are landing off the property that the firing range owner does not control, that would seem to be something that is not sufficient. Perhaps we should consider improving the definition to say, the first part, and then backed by a structure or mound that is sufficient in height, weight, and depth, and situated so as to prevent bullets or other fired projectiles from leaving the property that the owner does not control. In 170-70B28, we reference requirements, but I don't see where we list or otherwise spell out what the requirements are. How would the public or a firing range owner know what the requirements are expected to be complied with? I just think we need to improve the definition and be clear about what's required. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ron?
Ron Macklow, Jackson District, same subject. I agree with what she's talking about as far as the definition, in that there are words in there that really aren't conducive to a good understanding by the public. And starts out with occasionally. That's a very vague word. That could be a week, a day, you just don't know, and that needs to be more specific there. Also, on the design of structures or whatever, you have to understand that, different weapons have different requirements. So there's got to be, you can't just say open, substantial, or whatever. I mean, if it's going to be used for a high caliber weapon or whatever, it's going to have a different design than for a, small caliber or pistols or whatever. So there's that. And also, I just, to start this thing off, I'd like to say that I believe this started out because there were some problems in Amosville. And it's kind of like beer cans on fence posts. People were out shooting, and the rounds made their way into, I know, at least one person's home. And just for the record or whatever, a round from an M15, which is a weapon now that people are using, has a lethal range of 1/3 of a mile. So that has to be taken into consideration. And also, in the definition, it says nothing about property lines. In that most definitions that you read on this it says that the ammunition it has to be kept within the property lines. That's a requirement. Also, as far as the name on this ordinance or whatever, because the state has very little information on this, but what they do, they have an applicable, it's 15.2-917, applicability of local noise ordinances to certain sport shooting ranges. And then they have a definition down at the bottom here for the purpose of this section. Sport shooting ranges means an area or structure designed for the use of rifles, shotguns, pistols, silhouettes, skeet, trap, black powder, or any other similar sport shooting. And so if we're going to do an ordinance, it should align with this definition that the state has. Also, when you go down from the definition into Article 170-7028, it starts out with the firing range being inspected, certified as complying with the design provisions. In the definition, there are really no design provisions. It's very open and really doesn't say anything that you can really point your finger at. And also, this is the big problem, that the firing range are going to be inspected by the Sheriff's Office or other law enforcement agency, the National Rifle Association, or other such like qualified organization. Well, I looked things up, and there aren't any. Here's from the National Rifle Association. The range technician team does not certify, approve, or mark shooting ranges as safe or unsafe. The range technical teams can perform an on-site review and give suggestions for your range based on their observations. That's it. And if you go any farther down, just as far as certifying goes, no major organization formally certifies private firing ranges as legally or universally safe because facilities compliance fails under local zoning, environmental laws, and OSHA regulations rather than a single governing body. However, prominent groups provide professional ratings and evaluations, but they don't provide certification. And one more thing here. As far as, again with local government, a local government can face liability problems if it actively certifies or gives explicit safety approval to a private shooting range through the degree of risk, though the degree of risk depends heavily on state laws regarding sovereign and governmental immunity. Standard local actions like routine zoning approval or issuing a basic building permit rarely create direct liability for a private range's operations, but an official safety certification crosses into an administrative endorsement that can invite lawsuits if a stray bullet causes injury or property damage. So I think before you spend tax dollars to print this thing and bring it up to a vote, you're going to have to take another look at it and design it such that it meets the standards that are out there, and certification is not going to be one of those standards. Thank you.
Anybody else? What you call it?
Rick Kohler, Jackson District. My comments are just that I lived, we have a friend, a neighbor, who used to shoot a lot, and he had a range, and he would have friends over, and sometimes they would just shoot all day. It would start on a weekend, on a Sunday, it would start at 10, and it would go until, I don't know, late in the day. Fortunately, Kay and I usually weren't there because we were showing property or out working, but the neighbors always complained. And after a while, we heard this, I heard a lot of heavy equipment, clank, 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 clank over there, going on for about 2 weeks. I wondered what in the world was going on, and turned out he had built a new berm, brand new berm for his shooting range. And we were about 200 yards away. The other people were about 500 or 600 yards away in distance through the woods. And we heard him over there shooting one Sunday morning, and we were having lunch. And all of a sudden, there was an explosion, a huge explosion. Our house shook. The dog jumped, we jumped, picture fell off the wall. And it's almost like a cartoon. But, and my wife was furious. And she said, I'm calling him right now. I said, Kate, just ask him if he's okay. Just ask if he's okay. And so she called up and left a message, are you okay? And he called back about a half hour later. He said, I'm fine. Some jackass put a Tannerite target on my new berm and blew a hole in it. Yeah. And and he decided, you know, I'm not doing this anymore. So he stopped. I mean, he shoots himself, but he doesn't invite groups over anymore to shoot all day. And it was pretty bad. It was just like having a war going on next to you all weekend. So anyway, that's just for your edification.
Any other comments? Public comment, anybody wishing to speak? Okay, then I will close the public comment. And we will move on to the joint meeting with the VOS.
Yeah, the next item is to discuss the several bills of interest that the board and, just tip this way, the board tracked during the legislative session that need to be revisited. Some need to be revisited by the joint bodies and eventually revise some of your local ordinances to comply with new state law. And some don't require you to do that. So there's a tracking table attached to this agenda item. I actually updated it slightly today, but I thought it would be worthwhile to read through these handful of bills, and then you can have some discussion about them, and then provide some direction to staff on maybe priorities and how we want to handle some of these. There's some work that has been left undone for a few years that we might want to look at. So the first bill listed is related to cannabis sales, marijuana sales. That bill actually failed, but came back to life during the budget, as you all remember. During the session, it really changed a lot on what localities could and couldn't do relative to zoning. Where things ended, largely, disallows the counties from taking zoning action relative to the retail locations. However, counties must adopt a local tax ranging from 1 to 3.5%. So that's something that I think we'll want to look at in the coming months. These links should be live, and you can go in and review the documents. But by and large, by and large, there's not a lot of zoning regulation that we are allowed to apply in this situation. Earlier drafts would have allowed you to change various setbacks and distances and things like that. This is a competitive marketplace where there are a limited number of retail establishments and manufacturing establishments that are going to be allowed across the state. I kind of doubt that we're going to be very attractive locality from a retail perspective. So I would expect that we won't see a lot of pressure from these types of stores. Nonetheless, we'll provide an ordinance that taxes this. I would suggest at 3.5%, but
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We might see somebody who wants to grow marijuana in retail on,
it's
farm
possible.
store.
It's possible. Yeah. So there's really not a lot to talk about on this particular item.
What's the urgency on the adoption of the tax?
It's July 1, 2027, so you got some time.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I go for 3.5.
we'll have to deal with that sometime between now and.
And that should be an easy thing to do. Okay, more complicated. Utility scale solar, as board and planning commissioners are aware, we currently have special requirements in your code that have a number of special requirements in your code, including parcel size and there we go. This is for all electrical generating plant facilities, renewable energy. So very specific, very carefully prepared restrictions on view shed, acreage, setback, all of that. Most of that will have to be replaced. And the new code has quite prescriptive special requirement limitations that you can't exceed. Or I guess the other way around. You can't. They're less stringent than what you have now. Let me open this up as a separate tab.
Well, so is there any wiggle room on the requirements?
Yeah, you can be less. Yeah.
Take as far as we can.
You can be less restricted.
Al's you've sent some pretty troubling stuff from over in the valley, and I mean we haven't heard a lot about these on this side for a while. Having just come from Wisconsin, where I saw them everywhere, we got and let's face it, we threw this on in a pretty urgent fashion when this came up the last time. This ordinance that we have on the books now.
I mean, it took a little while to develop, and it was carefully construed, but it was done, with purpose. I've drilled in here to the paragraph that really hammers down what you can do. Setback distances shall be measured from the nearest edge of the equipment between 150 and 200 feet from the nearest point of the outer wall of existing occupied community building or dwelling on non-participating properties. And so ranges, right? Between 50 and 100 feet from the outside edge of the roadbed of any road. For projects not greater than 25 megawatts, which I think is about maybe 20 acres, 50 feet from the edge, and for projects greater than 25 megawatts, 100 feet from the edge. So I think ours is way more restrictive. 50 feet for, 100 feet from the edge of tidal wetlands, not an issue for us, or non-tidal wetlands, which we don't have a lot of wetlands here. Or a top bank of perennial streams, which would come into play. For projects of any capacity, we're not in CBPA. 50 and 75 feet from the nearest shared property line for non-participating properties.
That's it.
Nothing in this division to preclude the owner from of a non-participating property from waiving the foregoing. And so, in the past, we've even talked about setbacks from the fence line. This is from the equipment. This is way more lenient than what you have. Now, what the county, it's not a very attractive county. Ours is not a very attractive county for solar because of the access to transmission line infrastructure. Nonetheless, this is a big difference, and it's already in effect. This usurps this is state code. This is adopted. We need to align our code to this. But in practice, if we get an application tomorrow, the state code prevails. And that's different than, many other situations. But in the fact, when there is an adopted state code, that's what we have to follow. So from the standpoint of us making sure citizens understand what the requirements are, it makes sense for us to change 170-64I, which is where all of our requirements are, to align with what is in the state code, and then potentially, anywhere we can find some room for gray, try to paint in those gray areas for that section.
If we decide jointly to make this a priority, I know that Sarah at PEC has been great on all the data center stuff and guiding us. It might make sense at some point, if not to put more work on your shoulders, but I think having some view from the organization on kind of where things are headed on utility scale solar would make good sense to hear that soon. Yeah. Either at the planning commission or the board or jointly.
And they've done great work on agrivoltaics, trying to kind of find ways for agriculture and the solar industry to work together, so you can farm, raise, and crops.
It looks like our code limits it to 500 acres or more. Is there a limit on the size here?
No.
They actually specify the lot size, or is it only setbacks?
I don't recall, but I don't think.
Well, I wondered about.
I'm sure it's less than 500.
We move quickly.
Yeah.
The more I understand about the state's power situation or the lack thereof and our clean energy goals from Richmond, I really do believe there's going to be pressure for everyone to have utility grade solar. So anything we can do now to help us and get PEC involved is a very good idea. I think we really need to jump on this and jump on it quickly.
What about slopes? I mean, some of the conservation, there's got to be some restrictions there.
If it's not written, it's no restriction.
No, there's practical restrictions, right? So the market will tell everybody what is viable. And so the market loves a great flat area with no trees that they can go in, and which is prime ag soils, right? If they can find that somewhere, a neighboring community somewhere else that's easy to implement, they're going to do that before they come here and have to have a bunch of slopes and things. That said, if it's a forested area, that's just another revenue source on that property before they go to build the solar panels. And it might be a scenario where it's pretty well buffered from most everywhere if it's in the middle of a large forested, tract of land. So this is one that VACO and you fought hard against, but
Everybody has more money.
very strong advocacy here, and as Chair Donahue said, the utility providers have shared that they expect power demand to be going up, like 20 times.
Yeah.
So it's all of the above, on-site, every sort of way of power. I don't understand how we could ever meet those sort of requirements with. The market's going to sort that out over the next several years. What it looks like, we're going to find out. It's certainly not going to be by solar panels, where the entire state would be covered, literally. So unfortunately,
With windmills.
yeah, well, in the first commercial windmill, wind power generating plant went online recently. Tag teamed in with the utility scale solar is battery energy storage. And beginning July 1, 2026, the state said, well, if you've got a permitted utility scale solar, then battery energy storage is allowed by right at that site. Now, it makes engineering sense to do that because you hear about the pros and cons of sun. It only generates electricity when the sun is shining. What happens when you need energy when the sun's not shining? So you put batteries at the same site as the solar panels, then it kind of helps regulate those on-off sort of things. Fortunately, towards the end of the back and forth on this bill, it was limited to the size of the solar facility. So it can't be bigger, this giant battery center with 3 solar panels on the side saying, see, I got a solar plant, and then it's just all batteries. So that was synced up. So unless and until we have a special exception that is approved for utility scale solar, then you wouldn't be mandated to approve battery energy storage. When you recently updated your substation special exception requirements, you also included some information in there about battery storage to ensure that they weren't going to be an overly gross use at one of those substations. Okay. So battery energy storage is only going to be a bigger and bigger and bigger deal, and REC has some projects underway to demonstrate how useful they are independent from utility scale solar. So they're banking electrons when they're cheap and spitting them out, when they're not, so they suck up all the power in the middle of the night and then kick them out in the morning when everybody's going, turning everything on in their house. So more to come on that. There are a lot of issues with them relative to public safety and fire, and there's fortunately there is some good work at the state level to make sure the public safety requirements do get involved in what you can regulate relative to separating out cells, keeping, not having too many cells in one area, and then so the building code is, the fire code is staying up to date. So that's positive. Affordable housing, there's some provisions that enable the board to incorporate new requirements, but they don't require you to do it. So it allows any locality in the Commonwealth to provide for an affordable housing dwelling unit program by amending the zoning ordinance. This is something that you might look at sometime down the road when you're not trying to figure out how to catch up to these other things, but it's not something you have to do. But as I've pointed out in the past, once language gets into the state code that is enabling, that says the locality may do this, it's pretty easy for that code to then be amended to change the mays to shalls. Exactly. So we begin to pay attention. Not that we don't want affordable housing. That's that's good, and it may fit what we want to do. So it's just something we need to pay attention to. Cell towers. I was talking to Michelle earlier today, and I couldn't believe it's been this long. In 2018, state code changed significantly relative to cell towers, and our local code has not caught up to those 2018. And actually, when we processed the permits for 522, the one in Scrabble and the one further up, we followed those state requirements. It's time to fold those into our local code.
Like the one that we brought up recently, the bonding requirement for removal and
Things like that. That's right. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, I keep doing that. New tab. This year, there was further opportunities relative to modifying existing towers. So it prohibits a locality from denying application for the modification of an existing wireless facility if the modification would not substantially change the physical dimensions. So that, largely is already in line with some federal requirements. So if you're just adding more antennas onto the same tower, we can't run them through a special exception process. If you aren't, and federally, if you are increasing it by less than 20%,
increasing what by 20%?
Height, then that has to be by right. But it's 20% ever, right? So if you have a 100-foot tower, you get 20 feet. And we need to keep track of that over time. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the Massey's corner area, Rose Hill Farm silo, recently grew in height, administratively due to those federal laws.
We don't get another 25 feet.
But they're max. That one was like 120 to start, so, right. They're, now, it is supposed to match visually, and I think Michelle's reached out to them and say that's not exactly a match. Provides the modifications not substantially change the physical dimensions of the existing facility if it entails excavation or deployment of transmission equipment within 30 feet, so they can build any new buildings they want around the base of it, and you can't require a special exception. So this builds on top of the 2018 rules that really changed the way these are permitted, and we do need to wrap these and the old ones into our ordinance sooner than later. Our telecommunications ordinance is pretty old and quite out of date. And like I said, during those last couple from CWS, we couldn't even really follow the process because it was preempted by state law. That's all effective July 1. Well, the new modification part is effective July 1. There has been a lot of conversation about the affordable housing at religious or other nonprofit land. So basically allowing multifamily anywhere there was a nonprofit or religious property. So church owns property, they want to build housing, they can do it by right. A lot of work happened on this bill throughout the session. Ultimately, it got pinned down to availability of utilities, which largely saved us from having a very rural church decide they want to put an apartment complex up and us having to allow it. This could change again in the coming sessions. But for right now, it has to be within an area planned for public water and sewer. That means the town of Washington must allow, if there's land owned by church or other nonprofit, by right. It doesn't really affect us because we don't have any area that is an area planned for public water and sewer.
What about sewer?
It has public sewer, it doesn't have public water.
Yeah.
And I'm not aware of any plan to bring it there at this time. But a lot of conversation about that. Also a lot of conversations about accessory dwelling units by right. And the message from VACO throughout the session was one size does not fit all when you're talking about ADUs. It's a totally different conversation. It's a different conversation whether you're talking about sticking a second dwelling structure on a quarter-acre lot in a grid neighborhood that has built-out water and sewer, and now you're going to double the amount of water and sewer needed, double the amount of roads needed. That's one situation. Totally different situation when you talk about a rural community like ours and immediately doubling density. And when it talks about ADU, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to meet our standards of 200 feet away from the principal or 1,200 square foot limited floor plan. There's one sentence in the entire bill at the very end that said nothing in this section shall apply to a locality that adopted an ADU ordinance prior to January 1, 2026. Well, of course, you have one. You allow them by special exception. You have your special exception requirements. And so you have adopted it, and you adopted it well before January 1, 2026. So this new provision doesn't apply to us yet. And next year, General Assembly would come up, and that line could easily be taken out.
So in your circles, who does that apply to? Who did that apply to? Northern Virginia's got ADUs. Now some would call them affordable dwelling units as opposed to accessory dwelling units, but we're talking about the same thing. I was hard pressed to find, I could not find a locality that doesn't address it. So
I'm not sure. I know anywhere that has, the more conventional subdivisions is concerned about doubling density on, planned developments because of the infrastructure and everything that's in place. Practically, it's less of an engineering concern for us. Our roads are going to be fine, but our schools and other things like it could take a hit, and our vision and way of life might be impacted. The powers to be at the state want to adjust the supply-demand angle of housing. And I think it's everything in the drawer approach, and this is one of the things in the drawer. Now, whether it would practically make a big difference throughout the state, I don't know. But it doesn't here, and quite frankly, the Planning Commission and the board largely have recommended and approved ADUs when they've been applied for. Correct. And because they come at a pace that is not overwhelming, and in most situations, they're in reasonable locations on large lots where, it's helping a family, stay here with, we've seen some where the parents want to move to the new building because it'll be accessible and the kids are going to move into their house and they can stay on the property for a longer period of time, or the opposite, so the kids can get a start without having to find a way to afford the property and a house out there.
Whenever anyone puts pressure on and says, what are you as an elected official doing to address the affordable housing situation in our community, I always point to accessory dwelling units. I can think off the top of my head 4 or 5 that we've approved, I think unanimously in the last 3 years, that were decidedly for the purpose of allowing either an adult child newly married to reside on a property, or to allow aging parents to remain on their property and switch their house with their children. And it's a very not disruptive and very practical way in our rural environment to incrementally, not dramatically, incrementally address the question of affordable housing. And so I really see all the ADU stuff as really fully related to the separate legislative topic that you raised earlier about the question of affordable housing. I think we're hitting the nail on the head with ADUs.
Yes, I think the final legislation and the law coming up in 2027 it originally had very small setbacks because they're thinking about the suburban subdivision. And so then, we have, a 100-foot setback here or there, but then it's like, well, you can be within 20 feet of the property line. Yeah. Well, that doesn't make any sense for Rappahannock County. And so it's those sorts of things. And, it would likely preempt the 200 feet. And it would likely preempt the 1,200 square feet. And, the things that we think are inherent and important to the ADU as we define them, and you've approved them here, you might lose some of those protections. Because if you're going to have a 1,200 square foot building within 200 feet of your principal residence, you're probably going to pay a lot of attention to who's going to live there and how they live, and it's not going to get too crazy. But if it's on the other side of your property, out of sight, out of mind, and 20 feet from your neighbor's property line, that becomes a little less palatable for us out here. And so these are ones we have to pay attention to every session. And it's a daunting task when there's thousands of bills. Fortunately, VACO does a great job to highlight some of the bigger issues.
I think it's probably come to a time to think about ADUs a little bit more user-friendly. We're never going to have a rezoning in this county that's going to create affordable housing. You may create small lots someplace in the zoning category, but the infrastructure is going to be such that it's going to add a value added to the land and lot, where even with a modest house, you're going to create a product that is not affordable. Pretty much today, a 1,200 square foot house, you can do a vinyl sided house, well septic, is going to run you pretty close to $300,000. if you add the land cost to it and infrastructure things, you're going to be, you know, 450, 500,000. And, you know, we have a budgetary problem in the county, and you know, we have an aging population, and we're trying to be agritourism, and we have restaurants, wineries, all these businesses that are tourism related, and also schools. But there's no place for these workers that are making $15, $20 an hour really to live. I mean, they have to go to Page County, Warren County, Madison, wherever, and not live here. And also from the standpoint of revenue, you know, I think we get pretty good revenue from the agritourism part of the lodging and meal tax. And I think we really need to make the ADUs more user-friendly to landowners and give them an opportunity to invest in their land and take control of their land. And if they can say, well, I can put an ADU on my property for $300,000, opportunity cost is 6%, you know, I can rent this place out for $1,500 a month, and I get my 6% return. And I think what you were saying, Gary, you know, if it's on your property, the landowner is going to, you know, look after it and maintain it and make sure it's well kept. And there's not going to be any state or federal tax dollars for affordable housing. So I think we have to think about making this an avenue to make things more affordable here in the county, and have an attraction for younger people that are coming here or working here, that they can live here and have some families here, and, you know, and come up with some discussion here to address this.
A kind of a sticky issue with this right now is, I'm not sure what it means if you modify your ADU ordinance right now. Does that affect your standing of having adopted one before?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's, would definitely want legal to be carefully scrutinizing that. That if you were to, say you made it to 250 feet or 150, whatever, you change some number, does that change the datum, and is it now right? I don't know the answer to that. It scares me that it could, you know, fall into that.
Now it's locked based on the inception date.
Yeah, but I think, you know, of all the kind of residential development patterns that could happen here, you know, the adaptive, gradual expansion of the build-out capacity through ADUs is one of the more palatable that I think the community would see.
I agree.
And I think next to that is multiple dwellings on very large parcels. You have many very large parcels, and you know, by right, it could be divided into, you know, if they divide it into 50+ acre lots, there's very limited controls on that activity. But you might be able to have, somebody might keep their large parcel together if you allow them to put a couple more dwellings on it. And if it's 600 acres and there's 3 dwellings, is that a problem? It's probably a better thing to have than have 600 acres divided into 50-acre chunks. Mm-hmm. And it might be that incremental step that would keep somebody from doing it. Now, it wouldn't stop them from dividing it someday in the future, but it might forestall it now.
Well, the other way you could think of it is that, okay, you have, you know, the density issue, which is you can make it easier to cluster the housing and have more open. I mean, it depends on what your goals are. If your goals are open space and view shed, agriculture, those kinds of things, then you'd really want to cluster buildings rather than have them spread throughout the county, or on the tax district work. We have all these tenant houses. I suppose if you control the size, then you're more likely to parcel it if you have, you know, sell the parcel with the builder.
Yeah. But the one thing you can't do is you can't compel a property owner to, you know, keep their large parcel forever. That's not our right to do, true. Right? And they have certain rights available to them that they you know, if the financial dynamics of the situation force them into a situation where they, can't afford their taxes anymore. They're going to do what they have to do.
Yeah.
And so if there are ways that you can find to make it a little bit easier for them to sustain, then, those are things you have to talk about and think about.
Well, we had this by right of, if you want to call it ADUs or whatever, basically in the county from the very beginning up until we created zoning that disallowed it. Farmers, if they needed a tenant house, they built it,
But that's still true, you can still build it too.
I know, but then zoning came along and said, well, you know what, we got to stop this. And you think, if you look over, I always get my North Pose Road and all these roads mixed up. The road that comes out on 522 across from Wakefield, is that North Pose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jericho.
Jericho.
No, but it's-
Turns into
you're
North
right,
Post.
it's- Yeah.
So,
Agree on the name.
I mean, Freddie Coonley there, when he was actively farming that,
Yeah.
he put two modulars facing each other. And they were tenant houses
Yeah.
on that farm. And he put them right facing each other, and then he had some other ones scattered over the farm. And, and he had workers that lived in there and worked the cattle, horses, and all that. And, and subsequently, the farm was, moved on, and it's been sold. And those two houses actually were sold off separately. And I guess somebody's renting them today. And that was right there in a high dollar area, the Gold Coast and all that. And it really, nobody complained about it. It didn't impact us. So, and that wasn't close to his house. So,
Yeah.
If you keep it 1,200 square feet, one story, the visual is going to be limited. So it's, and then if you want to create more tourism dollars, these things, 3-bedroom, 2-baths, is ideal for the rental part where you get $400 a night for it. So I don't know, it's something that can work in it. And you can loosen up on the distance and from the house, you don't have to have that 200 feet. So I'll let people put the house where they think it's the best place to put it.
It has been a continuum so far. The ADU, as you have now, was the family apartment. Before it changed, I think 4 or 5 years ago. And so at that point, pretty much all the requirements were the same, except for the first 2 years, it had to be a family member. And so that's been loosened to get to where you are now. And of course, the board, planning commission consider changes again in the future as your goals shift. But I think it's important to recognize the state is talking about this, and I would expect that it'll be talked about a lot in the next session as well. The last one on here is really just a technical thing. Our current code does not have this identified. There are a group of uses, group home uses that the county must consider the same as you consider a residential dwelling. This is usually not as big of an issue here, but in cookie cutter subdivisions, people are alarmed to find out that the house around the corner is actually a group home with 6 or 8 residents that are maybe helped along by a steward. And the state mandates that we consider them the same as you consider a single-family dwelling. And they happen to change the term family day home to home-based child care in the code. And I went and looked, and we didn't have any of that in our code. So we probably ought to identify that.
About the group homes.
That's the last item. The group home has long been there. That's a good example of a thing that we must follow, whether it's in our local code or not, right? It's a state mandate. Whether we put it in our code or not, we got to do it. So that's just a cleanup item that I didn't want to lose when I was looking at that. And so 17029 is where you talk about the other similar uses, and that's where this should be put in.
But this doesn't include, like, for instance, when I think of family day home, I don't necessarily think it's childcare. It could be senior care.
Yeah, this is a different, that's covered by a different use. Let's go over here.
What's on Jackson Lane down there and Scrabble, what's that considered?
Jackson House.
What's it considered, how's it?
They have a special exception for
That's 24 hours. That's something. I mean, that's a nursing home, I guess.
Yeah.
think it's close enough.
So your code right now under 17029, limitation on occupancy of dwellings. So basically it says you can have one family there, a group of not more than 4 people. This is impossible to enforce, you know. Group of not more than 4 people, not necessarily related by blood or marriage. If you have 5 people, that's a zoning violation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's never going to work. However, it does get into the residential facility housing group, not more than 8 mentally ill, mentally retarded, developmentally disabled, in addition to staff, shall be considered for all purposes occupancy of a single family and may thus be located by right without conditions, ... So this whole section in 543401, the residential facility, that has parallel uses that are linked in that table that we don't even mention but should, and so we'll go back and make sure we've identified these other group uses that the state says we must consider the same as a single-family dwelling, and we'll list them here in this section and clean this section up, and that's really an easy change, but just one that we need to do, and that I was surprised to see after the fact changed this year. Wasn't paying attention to it. That was in effect July 1, 2026. I don't think I'm sure this was very important to some group of people for some reason. I don't really know what that reason is. Yeah. Family day home to home-based child care, and the term family day system to home-based child care system. But we don't have either of those. So. All of this, utility scale solar is the big deal. And it's the one that, while it is largely prescriptive, I do think we need to be checking with our peers, you know, peer counties. Yeah. How are they handling this? Where are there areas that we can be unique? You know, where is it clamped down tight? Obviously, those ranges are very specific. We don't necessarily like those setbacks, but there might be a few other areas where we can express the vision of Rappahannock a little bit more. And if you push the limits, you might find a landowner who wants to do something that thinks that you've gone too far, and then there's a process and an avenue for that. And we'd rather not do that, but you know, sometimes that's what you have to do.
So if we had no solar, utility solar, scales solar ordinances, this would just trump it. This would be our new ordinance.
Yeah, and so interestingly, you don't have to approve them, right? You can have a special exception that has the requirements for the setbacks of 100 to 150 and all those things. And what all the industry people said, well, you don't have to approve it, you can just deny it. Well, we know that there's the fairly debatable standard, and that if you have a list of 15 requirements and they're square down the middle of those 15 requirements, and you just say, well, you know, but I don't like the color of your panels, so it's going to be very hard to withstand a legal challenge that your decision was fairly debatable.
Yeah, fairly debatable would not hold up with if it is prescriptive on, and it sounds like many degrees more specificity than what we adopted in terms of acreage and setbacks, and if you get someone with the means and the energy, no pun intended, to test that, we're gonna find ourselves in a world of hurt.
I think the historic preservation angles, the National Park view shed, things like that, which are really unique in our area, and which we do rely heavily on in our current ordinance. I think there are probably some ways that we can work that in, and special exceptions by their very nature should be a subjective legislative decision. What's good for one parcel may not be good for another parcel because of the site-specific conditions. You have to build this thing too, so you need giant trucks rumbling all over the place, and so if it's down a tiny gravel road, then it's probably not going to be a good idea. And those are, valid legislative reasons why a board, might be able to do it. But if it's right on a primary and it meets all the setbacks and it's right next to the transmission line, and it may be difficult.
I think you make a good point, because if you look at the subjectivity that is embedded in the precedent that we benefited from the state appeals court on the fairly debatable standard, they rested on the idea that the Board of Supervisors, or local governing body, holds the discretion to make subjective decisions absent analysis of data. And so in order to preclude an analysis that falls into the weeds of things like setbacks, you do have to land on things like the national park can be seen from all these parcels in the zoning district, or, you know, things that.
I think it's more vice versa. I think you're standing at the Shenandoah National Park and looking to the east, and when those mirrors shine in your face, and all you see is just a sea of white light.
And your current ordinance speaks to view shed at elevation.
Yeah.
Right? You know, if we're just on a prairie and there's, 100 feet of trees, no one's ever going to see it. Right? But around here, if you're on Red Oak Mountain and you happen to look down and, in the lower elevation, you're just going to see a sea of panels. Or if you're on Skyline Drive at one of the overlooks, you're going to see a sea of panels.
It probably precludes it almost everywhere in the county. Yeah, it's interesting though, I looked through that House Bill 711, I don't see anything on size. So it may be that we can keep our 500 acre size, but I do agree this is a priority.
Yeah,
This is the
so
one
I think we need to deeply analyze it, and so right now, obvious portions of our current ordinance are invalid based on setbacks and things that are directly in conflict with the ranges that are in the bill. So that cross-reference needs to happen sooner than later, and I would suggest that's probably your top priority. Even though I don't think there's a very large commercial driver for these in our community. Not to say it's not possible.
Not yet.
Yeah. But also, I mean, if there were, I mean, those companies offer a ton of money to put their solar panels.
You bring up another point that theoretically there is a door number 2 that you can go through and ignore these things, and that's by going through a siting agreement process. But it's not very clear how that exempts you from these requirements.
Just a quick comment, question maybe for Sarah. I hate to put you on the spot, but I think Kira had a good point earlier about maybe getting PEC involved, and I think that's an excellent idea. My question is, and this maybe just a yes or no, it's probably going to be a no. Has any other any of our peer counties locally contacted PEC, or have you been hearing this similar conversation because of this new legislation?
Just because it's my other beat. Culpeper County is having this discussion about its solar ordinance because a bunch of the things that it had in there, aggressive setbacks, strict limits on the acreage side, they're gonna have to pull out. They haven't done that yet because, like you all, they are seeing the wave of legislation with the ADUs and other things that they're gonna have to address, and I think they're gonna wait and bash all that together, but those conversations are happening. And they have already happened in Culpeper about the batteries.
And there are some established utility scale solar in Culpeper, so the batteries were an immediate concern?
There is not a built utility scale solar, but there is an approved utility scale solar.
Their land is more complicated.
So, Gary, when we had the Berkeley group here, we were supposed to get everything aligned in our code with the state. Did that happen? I don't remember if we got that far.
Largely, no.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there weren't major issues. There were several inconsistencies, but not major. Now, the subdivision ordinance was half of that. So you resolved all those problems when you updated the new subdivision ordinance. But there still are some items in zoning that they picked up that should be changed. And I imagine the cell stuff was probably listed in there because that was after 2018.
Is that something that needs to get added to the Planning Commission future list?
My understanding is that the board is not interested in reorganizing the zoning ordinance anymore. But the objective review of state code versus county code, I think there would be great value to picking that up off the table and reviewing. And we may surprise ourselves that we have picked up, because people say, oh, you're still using the 1986 zoning ordinance. There have been so many changes. Some of them are, the more subjective things that the community wants to see relative to ADUs and tourist homes. But others were more kind of objective requirements that have changed. And so it's not a static document since 1986 in the least bit. A lot of changes. And your online code now makes it a little easier to see that, at least going back to 2011, every ordinance that's been adopted is available. You can go see the current code and then track back to the ordinance that was adopted that made that change. But yeah, we can dig that out and get it on a future agenda. So my thoughts are we need to work with a little bit of pace on utility scale solar. We ought to make our life a little bit easier with the cell towers and get our local ordinance synced up. Ultimately, I think the community's perspectives on cell towers have changed a lot since the original codes were adopted that were extremely restrictive. Yeah, and now it's much better, although not perfect, as we know from our landline telephone issues. Yeah. But I think both of those would be good things to start digging into. You have opportunity, of course. Money equals time in some ways, so staff can work on these things. We could bring a third party in to try to accelerate it. The problem with bringing a third party in is this doesn't have the flavor of the community, and you're worried about getting the county X version trying to be plugged into your code.
And we tried that.
And you're not a county X in any way, shape, or form, right?
Yep.
So it's just, there's always a long list of things.
Yep. I think your list is good. Anywhere you said may versus shall could happen, and just a tweak in Richmond could change any of these that could really hurt Rappahannock County, our goals and our comp plan. Any of those, I think we just need to jump on as quick as possible. And if it looks good and we don't think anything is going to change, great, but at least we've done our due diligence and got ready for January.
The word we got last session from VACO and others is that the General Assembly is done hearing our message of stay out of our local business.
Yeah.
They're done with that.
Yep.
So now the transition is to, okay, just please, one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
Recognize that what's good for Fairfax isn't good for Highland or Rappahannock. Or even Powhatan or Culpeper is not necessarily good for Rappahannock. So we need to keep making sure our representatives hear that message and others do as well. All right, so any other guidance for us as we try to?
So I guess one thought, and I'm new on the board still, I feel, even though it's been 8 months, but if there's a mismatch between the code, like there was with the cell towers, we just revert to the state code. So it's not like there are things we want to take care of, but I don't see bringing in the third party to scrub the thing and make sure everything's lined up, knowing this is going to happen next year again.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I would say there's a yes, but sort of scenario that with the utility scale solar, with the cell, and like we talked about with some of the subjective perspectives that can be applied to a special exception, if you don't update your local ordinance, then you can't insert those really hyper-local subjective perspectives. Now, there may be hard stops that you can't affect certain things, but there may be some requirements that you can insert into the requirements for a special exception for a tower or whatever that it adds on to the prescriptive language in the state code, but layers in a little bit of subjectivity here because of certain hyperlocal situations.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm
So
saying
that's
is,
why you would want to do it sooner.
we know the priorities, let's focus on those, and if there's the one
Yes.
little thing that's, where there's a mismatch.
Yeah,
and we
so like
find
this,
it,
the last one with the housing, I mean, that doesn't really change anything, but if we're opening the zoning ordinance to do a bunch of tower stuff, it's easy to add 3 words to 17029 and check it off the list.
Well, I also think that somewhere on our list, we should think about ADUs and if there's going to be pressure to have affordable housing, which I think there's probably going to be legislation. I mean, I'd be really surprised if there wasn't a state mandate that looking at our ADUs and seeing if there's some way to tweak it to make that.
Well, and whether we can or should,
Yeah.
and not open Pandora's box. And once we learn that, the box is open for us, then definitely you begin to shape it. Can you kind of push it in, rather than stop the train, can you kind of push it in a direction to meet as many of your local goals as you can?
No, the question about if you change it, are you subject to a whole new package?
You could have a discussion on it that incorporates a lot of what Al has said, and just kind of from a planning commission perspective, you could at least talk about ADUs in the context of the affordable housing question, and then stop short of, for the time being. But honestly, we know how slow things work. By the time you get around to some consensus on where you want a new ordinance to go, will probably be to a new.
It's a frustrating part.
Yeah.
The state will change the goalpost again.
But I think some really good points have been raised that are worth hashing out. But for sure, utility scale solar should be the.
And you might get to a point where you think that ADUs are reasonable by right if certain setbacks are included in different things, if the parcel's a certain size or whatever other prerequisites. And then the state might come along with prescriptive, requirements that, well, I know you like your local setbacks and acreages, but here's what you're going to do. So we always have that. Yeah. For now, you have a little bit of protection because of that one sentence.
Yeah.
And I would hide under that sentence for a little while you focus on these other things.
It seems, I think it was mentioned that we don't move at the speed of lightning on doing changes, and we rely upon you, Gary, and Michelle Watt, and the PDC for help. And I guess the Berkeley group was, I don't know if you was going to rate them, I don't know, do they get a C, do they get a B? Where do they fall in the grade there?
I think they were performing the scope they were asked to do, but we probably shouldn't have asked them to do that scope.
Okay. So maybe a little bit less than a C. So it would seem, gosh, it looks like there should be a person someplace in a reasonable distance of here that has tremendous experience either from teaching or from being retired from a department that would maybe excel in having an assignment like this that's part-time that could
maybe
help. What's that worth to us to get all this done in a professional manner? You got so much going on, and Michelle does. It's just stretching, and we are tools, but we're not the commission itself are tools, but we're not the programmer necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's valuable insight. Ultimately, whatever is developed and placed before the Planning Commission, I would hope the Planning Commission would shape, right, iteratively. But whatever is ultimately placed before the Planning Commission and goes to public hearing, that's got to get through your gate, right? Sure. So you're charged with making sure it is a Rappahannock version.
Sure.
But we don't want to waste a lot of time and see 15 versions like, nope, that's not it. That's not it. Yeah. So I think there are probably some folks who may be positioned to do that sort of thing. I'm not sure how we would find them necessarily, but they might be out there. I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I'm sure your peers have got some ideas on that, surrounding counties.
And most of them are up to their eyeballs.
No, I meant on people they've used.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But they may be perfect people for,
Yeah, it's obviously got to be rural and small, but, yep.
I mean, even Falk here in Loudon, they have vast areas of their counties that are very similar to ours.
Yeah.
Clark, vast areas of their county very similar to ours. So, yeah, I think, it's possible. We can kind of beat the bushes a little bit and see what's out there.
You want to go to the next comprehensive plan 5-year review, it looks like?
So I would say that the Planning Commission has satisfied their legal obligation to review the comp plan every 5 years. You've definitely done that, and you did a very good job of visiting your communities and getting input. Staff is committed to updating the narrative, the objective portions of the narrative. That's a slog, and it's underway.
Yeah, it is a slog.
But at some point, and really any time, the Planning Commission needs to think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And the future plan, and whether anything really should change there. And that's not something that I think should be driven by staff necessarily. You're in place to be considering that. So I uploaded just today where things stand with the current document of just going through all the data and stuff, which I'm not sure if it really informs things. Of all the charts that I saw so far, Michelle's updated a lot of tables and graphs and then kind of sent them over, and I've been taking that and plugging it into the document and updating narrative. And so kind of tag teaming on that. Of all of it, one table, and I think it was one graph, sorry about the cover not being quite right, but it's two, where is that? Age demographics, there you go. This really struck me. The acceleration of the aging of the population is significant. Just in, we didn't have 2020 data when the last plan was done because it just missed the decennial census. But you look at the 65 to 74 and the 75 plus, and you look at the growth, 2000, 2010, 2020, 2024. Many would say this is somewhat predictable based on some of the actions that this community took in 1986. It's been a social experiment of, what do you get after you take certain actions? Well, we're learning what we get. And a lot of that also has to do with school age population, which is stabilized more or less now. But I think this is, something that is pretty important that our community needs to think about.
Yeah.
And think about what does that mean relative to our overall planning vision? Should it influence any changes? And the answer may be no, I don't know. But right now, if you go to, back to the top. I hate not having my regular keyboard here. If you go to all of these words in this entire document really land back here in the future land use plan in this paragraph. Let's see. So we don't have a map, we have, a written plan. And we think that, as noted in the preceding chapters, the comprehensive plan envisions and encourages future residential commercial development be focused in and around the major villages, consistent with the undeveloped potential of current zoning district designations. The entire document boils down to that sentence. And I think the planning commission needs to think about that sentence.
Yeah.
And whether, is that the future vision still valid? And this essentially says, we don't really support upzoning.
Don't really what?
Don't support upzoning. We support infill at current zoning, is what this says. And maybe there is enough out there, ag and ADUs and extra dwellings and using what is available of RR5. There's plenty around the county. But that sentence defines, a lot of communities have a future land use map that shows the current zoning of the whole county, and then it shows, well, this is how we expect these different areas to change, higher density here. And of course, we don't have that map, but we have this sentence that says, our future land use map is the same as our current land use map.
Yeah.
And that's important to think about.
The last time we did the comprehensive plan, I mean, it was like, when you talked about, if we wanted to change anything, it was like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
You kidding me?
Yeah.
You brought that up?
Yeah.
And I kind of said something the other day about us. Do we want to, change anything in this? And, with the episodes, with the situations, with the applications, and what was a more neutral word that's happened in Sperryville on a couple applications where things could have happened, there was an outcry against it. So if it doesn't happen where there's sewer, how can it happen anyplace else?
Yeah, and the vision that outside of this section, which would be changed from now, it is very clear that the vision of the community is to develop in and around the villages and the town.
Yeah.
Except,
We
don't want to do that.
Except when somebody has to do it. Then it's another.
Or
And
except if you have to pay for the sewer,
Well, yeah. And the goal there, I think, is noble, that we don't want the agricultural lands to kind of have this rural sprawl.
Yeah.
We save the rural land and focus the development in and around the villages, consistent with the existing zoning. Well, there's some infill lots that, some capacity here and there that can be tapped, and others that are zoned for residential that, for various reasons, have not been tapped and have been resisting to be tapped. But this overarching vision of we want development in and around the villages, So we can keep all these same words the same and change the statistics, and you can adopt a new plan, and it really doesn't advance the conversation at all if it should change. Maybe it shouldn't change. I don't know.
There's a lot of things impacting where we are now, I think. Of course, we've got the zoning ordinance that has created the county the way it is now, and then the graphs you were showing up there is responsible somewhat for that. And then you move on to the actual reality itself, where the only people that can afford Rappahannock County pretty much are people outside the county. And I think if you looked at the buyers here, I think you'll probably see 80–90% or more of the buyers, are outside the area. And they are older age, where they have the money, the income to come out here and buy a property. And, I look at where I live down on Battle Run Road from Long Mountain all the way over to 729 there, all through Lyles, all those properties there. There's not a single child in the school system in all those. And they're all $1, $2, $3 million houses, and everybody in there, I think probably youngest person's probably 50, 55 years old. So that's what we've created, So.
Can I see that chart again?
Probably.
Maybe not.
Yeah, it's up here in 3 somewhere.
Very lost
The
it.
problem may not be, I mean, the comprehensive plan says what we're supposed to do, we just haven't done it. You know, there's no growth around the villages, I mean, we
Well,
have.
it's a number of things, you know, the commercial is no really industrial land, we've made that decision in the county. There's very little commercial land in the county, and some of it was put at places where it shouldn't have been put at. And then other parts of the commercial land is owned by people who own other commercial land who don't want anything to happen. So, I mean, the pool of all these things are small. And there's been a couple times where people were looking to maybe divide some residential land, and then this came up about the 50-foot road, and, you know, it was outside where, you know, nobody knew this before, and this school ordinance thing.
Yeah, when all the protections that were put into place when the land was divided are so restrictive,
Yeah.
the proffers and the overlay zone, and it makes it very, very hard to.
And we tried, the last time we tried to make maps, we tried to.
There was a discussion of whether there should be village area maps to identify, you know, what, if there is a mind to say the future of the villages could be more dense, incrementally more dense, then you would want to define, well, where are the villages?
Well, exactly.
But if you don't want to make anything more
And we tried to
dense.
define Sperryville. We
Yeah.
tried to define Sperryville.
Yeah.
And didn't
But
want
my
that.
recollection of that definition, I mean, it was like somebody just took a pencil and, I mean, there was no logic, there was no, like,
Well,
I mean, it was
We
like.
tried to,
Or Amosville, that one of Amosville.
we
was
tried to
ridiculous.
define Sperryville as the zoning, by the zoning, anything that had R5 and more intense and commercial, that was the village of Sperryville. They wouldn't accept that as a boundary line, so, you know, what is it then?
But there's, you know, the only need to draw a line is if you think that on one side of the line, the kind of the policy level vision should be different than on the other side of the line. If it's gonna be the same everywhere, it doesn't, you know, there's no need to go through drawing a line. You know, if it's, you know, use the underlying zoning, then the line is unimportant. If it is within this line, you know, our vision is that incremental zoning, you know, density changes may be appropriate, well, then you should draw a line, because that's not everywhere.
It's the rural version of Portland, Oregon's urban growth boundary.
Sure.
Is what it is.
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, it's like drawing a line and saying, inside these lines,
Now,
it's a
until you,
free-for-all, and outside these lines, it's Rappahannock County.
Virginia Beach
To
had
some
something
extent,
similar.
within the zoning, like you said, like R5 and Warren Towns.
You all had your listening tours that you did. Did anything come out of it that was different? Anybody?
Yeah, everybody's worried about, you know, fewer children, lack of jobs, old, you know, an aging population. But nobody, I don't remember anybody making a suggestion about what we should do about it. I mean, unless you all, I mean, I could look.
Maybe it would be a good idea for staff to try to summarize the input that you received.
I think if you try to measure any results,
I mean, it's obviously
some
scattered.
of them did no attendance, other ones one attendance. I think Chester Gap was most widely attended one.
Yeah, and that was really, I learned a lot.
And several people attended all of them, which is, you know, great for having interest. So I think, you know, my main message here is that staff is slogging through the,
Well,
you
so
know, it's
we
kind of
should
the
just go ahead
back
and
end.
set a work day and look at how we want to go forward.
Yeah, but the planning commission needs to start really thinking about, okay, assuming the demographic data doesn't paint a wildly different picture, and we're working through that, and you can see some of that data. What does that mean relative to the really where the rubber meets the road in chapter 6 and 7? And that's what you really need to think about, chapter 6 and 7.
I figured it out.
Okay. Yeah. So for the even 10 years or from the decennial census, otherwise it's the American Community Survey, we can clean up the citation.
Okay, well, so we could do this right now, we could just set it as, we'll discuss the comp plan at our next meeting, unless we think we have lots of other things.
You got the public hearing.
Let's do
I don't have anything right now.
There you go.
Well, let's do a work session then on that. Or look through the comp plan.
At the next meeting? Yeah, okay.
And so I would encourage you to look through the
Yes.
documents that are up there now that have some stuff changed. You can see where demographics have changed around through where it's updated. That might influence you. And as time goes on, we'll get further on through.
What was that paragraph you highlighted?
That is chapter 7.
Chapter 7.
Yeah. So that's the future land use plan.
There was a discussion about reordering the chapters because
Yeah.
the really important stuff is not.
Kira, said, after all of our work, you're burying the lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe you need an executive summary and say, if you want to read something, read these 4 pages.
Yeah.
And then if you really are tired, you need to fall asleep.
Yeah, the first energy guy, I felt bad for him. I'm like, hang on while I flip to the back and read what matters.
Yeah, and literally, the chapter 6 are the goals and priorities. Those are instructive, and those really help you when you're making those legislative decisions on whether a special exception makes sense or doesn't make sense. You can use and lean on those to, for that purpose. But, chapter 7 in comprehensive plans largely about the future. You have zoning ordinance for the now. Practically laying out what is allowed now, what is the process to do something now. The comprehensive plan is, where do we see ourselves in the future? And is it the same as now, or do we have a future vision, and then how do we implement ordinances to get us from here to there? It's pretty easy to implement ordinances to get us from here to here, which is kind of our current mode. And I think a lot of people in the community think that's where you should be. Let's go from here to here, or here to 80 years ago.
That language that you highlighted up there, I mean, it is pretty specific, but I think we got to be careful of is that language I think is appropriate, but I don't think it pigeonholes us at all that we have to concentrate right around the villages. I don't know what that looks like, and if it is concentrated around the villages, I think folks imagine this. 100 more units coming in, or this big industry coming in, it has to be compatible to the village itself. And that may be a small project. It might not be 70 units. It might be 15 units placed nicely around the village that provides housing, tax base. So I think it's kind of what you're imagining in your head when you read that. So I think that language is appropriate. I don't think it.
Well, and you can dictate that, but to a large extent by restricting size, height, all of this.
So.
Yeah, the consistent with the underlying zoning is what is concerning to me. There was earlier drafts that talked about incremental zoning density changes, and that was not palatable. So if you had somebody who maybe has agricultural property today, maybe it's 38 acres, and they want to build residential there, and they could do one without rezoning it. Well, how does the comprehensive plan guide us there? Let's do it consistent with the underlying zoning. Doesn't want to rezone it. Is that really what we intend?
Yes.
Okay, then don't change it, right? But when somebody who bought 38 acres next to a village comes in and says, I'd like to put 15 units here. So the comp plan says, nah.
Depends on where that line is.
Well, and if there was a line that you said, hey, if you're in the a development district of the sewer system that could regionally provide service, then the answer may be different than consistent with the underlying zoning. But that's, those are the real big picture and, big idea questions that the Planning Commission needs to think about. And the community is going to tell you eventually through public hearings in multiple public hearings perhaps, that they don't see it the same way you do, or they do.
I think it's pretty clear that they've already said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't see it.
I don't think we need any more to clarify that.
Yeah, and what are the intended and unintended consequences, you know, can we try to bracket those? Maybe.
So the direction we're headed, you know, it seems like we need more paid EMT people, more fire people, and assisted living and medical.
Double up these old folks in the same bed.
You start building assisted living, you will definitely need more EMT crews.
You want to live in place.
Every day where I used to live, it was kind of the first couple calls in the morning.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, great. So,
Oh boy, firearms
do you
next.
want this?
It's getting easier.
Yep, going to firing range regulation.
To make this maybe a little easier, I did print out copies of this. I thought it might be easier for you to have it in front of you. So I don't know how many I printed.
I'll let you and
Here.
Gary opine on this one.
Take one down, pass it around.
I know this guy who was head of Virginia State Police. I don't know. Do you know him? Never shot a weapon. Well, I don't know.
There's the man. My neighbor, this will make a good public hearing.
Anybody need one?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Oh, yeah.
It says that at the top. It says,
If you have an extra, you can send it back this way.
very good public hearing coming just ahead.
Yeah. Really good.
Here. Put that in front of you.
No.
All right, just a brief history, and then I think it would be good to have conversations. The Board of Supervisors has discussed this at their meetings a couple times. The draft is tweaked. Ultimately, originally this was drafted by Mr. Goff. He and myself and Michelle discussed this, talked about if you were to regulate non-commercial firing ranges, how might you do that in your ordinance? You know, particularly in an agricultural community, this is shooting your weapon in your backyard or your back 100 acres is a by right thing to do. So how do you handle that? We already have special exception requirements, special requirements for commercial firing ranges. It runs through a whole long list of the different standards you need to meet. Looking at this fresh from the perspective it's already by right use, all of those requirements didn't seem to make sense to us that you would somehow try to port those over to somebody's backyard, whether that's 100 acres or something different. And so we looked at, okay, well, how do we handle other by right uses that are not a principal use? Because shooting a gun on your property is not the prime use. The house is, or the barn, or the farm. And so it's an accessory use. And so we said, oh, well, we have a whole section about accessory uses. Maybe that is the way to do this. And so we pushed that around a little bit, and we came to the conclusion that that is the most appropriate way to do this. We handle other situations similarly, that if you have an established principal use, there are inherent accessory uses that you can perform that are customary and incidental to that principal use. But maybe wide open application of that customary and usual accessory use isn't appropriate. Maybe we need to pin around the corners of it a little bit so that it is more appropriate, safe, or fits in the, with everybody else. And so that's how it came to be structured the way it is. The first thing to do was prepare a definition of what this thing we're trying to regulate is. And Art came up with this definition, and so that's in 170-8 where all your zoning definitions are. And I can't really speak for Art on this other than to say I think the intent was to be somewhat vague because of the nature of what can constitute one of these things, and it's, is it adequate? Well, it depends on whether it's a 22 or it's a, a high-powered 50 caliber rifle. I mean, it's just totally different. And so it didn't seem appropriate to try to structurally identify all the permutations that someone might need for a defined backstop for a firing range. But it did seem to be that this should be keyed to only apply in the case where somebody has built something. So if you're just in the backyard and you're shooting through your 100 acres or your woods or whatever, there are civil and criminal requirements forced upon you to be a responsible gun owner, whatever you're doing. And so if you're shooting and the bullet's going off your property, you might have trouble with the law. And if you hit or damage somebody's property, you might have trouble civilly with that person. And so when people want to be responsible and build a more defined firing range for their personal enjoyment, then we could provide some restrictions on what is appropriate. And they're pretty subjective, as was pointed out during public comment. It doesn't say it has to be 10 feet tall, 15 feet wide, made out of this material, that material. It more falls along the line of it needs to be appropriate. And then there needs to be a third party come and tell you that it's appropriate for what you're doing. And the sheriff's office apparently has offered to be involved in that process. Okay. Now, the conversations today about certifying by the National Rifle Association, I don't know anything about that. But that would be a problem if,
That's true.
If there's no other way. Maybe they have standards, so maybe a referencing NRA standards versus some sort of certification, I don't know. But the intent was to be somewhat vague on what was actually required rather than having X number of feet and this and that, and more about be appropriate and have somebody come who is an expert in the field tell you that it is appropriate for what you're doing. So that is a threshold entry point that may or may not suit the body's needs.
So are you telling us that this is a voluntary submission by somebody?
If you decide to build a physical backstop on your property and use a firearm and aim at it, you've now carved yourself into following these rules. If you're just you happen to have a property that's large and maybe it has hills involved and you're out shooting on your property, this doesn't apply. And I think that's a difficult concept really to think about, when this would apply or not. And I think there's a lot of concern that, a person with 100 acres wants to put a can on their fence line that's in the middle of the 100 acres and they're using a low power firearm or a shotgun, bird shot or something. It's not our concern.
Well, there's got to be, this is so vague, honestly. It's almost, all of the issues that were pointed out, where you have the sufficient height, obvious downrange, data. And in addition to structures and roads, what about livestock and people? I care a lot about those things. Sure. I care a lot about those things more than structures or roads. So honestly, that would seem to me.
Yeah, and legally, I don't know, are those things covered by the already criminal and civil, controls and laws that are in place? You just can't go shoot at your neighbor's cows. It's not allowed. And so no amount of accessory use provisions are going to change the fact that you can't shoot your neighbor's cows.
You can't be shooting into other people's structures, but it's happening, so.
So you're not going to use these, so what is the standard today?
We have no standard.
We have no standard, okay. So we start there, other than the criminal and civil side of things. That's responsible gun ownership is the standard today. And if you're not responsible, then a law enforcement officer could come tell you about it, or your neighbor could take you to court, right?
Yeah. So, I think this, the language still needs some work.
for a lot of the reasons we heard tonight, other comment, and probably more here. I mean, there's no, to me, this is backwards. I mean, why put a berm up and I'll be just fine? I'm not going to be subjected to any kind of inspection. I don't know why the sheriff's office would accept that liability. I mean, coming from an agency where firearms was part of our lives, and we did it all the time. Of course, it's a little bit different. That's more commercial. You had OSHA standards you had to meet. You had ventilation standards, but that's a different situation. But for a landowner, and I use your plinking when you talked about that, that just wants to go out and shoot on their property, it's incumbent upon that person who has that firearm to comply with state law. If they're reckless with it, then you face the consequences. That it's up to the Commonwealth Attorney whether he wants to prosecute it. Was it intentional? Most of these are not. It's just somebody shooting, being reckless, and it goes on somebody else's property, hits a house. That's bad. Hopefully nobody gets hurt. That's a little aggravating. There's some personal responsibility here. And I think we're trying to write something here to create personal responsibility. When you put a firearm in your hand, it is your responsibility as a gun owner to understand the safety of it. I think this is going to is not enforceable. I think this will be something that'll be on the books that will cause, unless it can be cleaned up and be really distinct in its language. I just think there's a lot of loopholes in here, and earlier, I don't know, how, if it's going to hold water. That was my words, but you kind of. I don't. I just see issues with this. I'd like to hear from the sheriff's office. I know someone said they spoke with them, but I don't know. I've not talked to the sheriff about it. But I would be, originally had in here. I think it even had the state police in the original language in here. There's a warrant. That ain't never happened. I mean, not that I'm not part of that agency, but I understand that.
And you also run into you have competing authorities now. One says yes, one says no.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And I just think we're trying to write an ordinance here, maybe for something where it comes down to personal responsibility.
Yeah, but people don't take personal. The problem is, one of the reasons we have this is you have the individual shooting, constantly shooting and terrifying one of his neighbors, so that she was too afraid to come out of her house, and the guy wouldn't stop. And she called the sheriff and said, I can't do anything about it. When she got the state police, I can't do anything about it. So if we don't pass an ordinance, people can just sort of shoot away in there. Maybe it's criminal if they hit somebody, but it's not criminal to terrify somebody in their own house.
I think the issue is that, it's the story that Rick told us. We have a neighbor that shoots periodically. There's nothing we can do from the county that would restrict their right to shoot, and this doesn't restrict the right to shoot. We're just saying, you should build this. And I don't know if it's good or bad to do that, but we can't stop anybody from doing that. I think that's the fundamental problem.
Well, in her case, no, she was afraid of the bullets coming. The burn was inaccurate.
Having come from an organization that was responsible for millions of rounds a year, and I was responsible for 4 different ranges, and literally it was tens of thousands of people that went there yearly qualified. I can tell you, I don't care if you got a full containment system, or you have a flat range, or you have a berm, rounds can get out, bottom line. And each round is going to be different. 22, 9mm, the surface dangers on a 9mm is 1,800 meters. On a 30-06, it is roughly 4,800 meters. That's surface danger zone. Military, we have to abide by the military standards. And you have to either own that land. This is not going to address that. Not at all. And it does nothing for hunting. You have someone in a tree elevated hunting. Now you're in an elevated position. the best thing you can hope for, bless you, in my opinion, the best thing you can hope for is to say, we recommend that you have this. Because if you don't, and there are accidents, that is Virginia Code 18.256.1, reckless handling of a firearm, and you're charged. It happened over on Jericho, and there were, I think, 8 people charged. There's no noise ordinance. That is one of the issues. I mean, if you could say music, there's more complaints, I think, on music and loud noises than there are typically on gunshots. But let's be honest, there's more cows that get out. Nobody goes to inspect the fence every year and make sure the fences are still good. And there's more involvement with people with cows than it is with people getting shot. I hope nobody ever gets shot. Don't get me wrong. But I think that's like Mr. says, I think this is almost an answer looking for a problem. I mean, one of the first rules when you're shooting, you can't legislate morality. You cannot legislate common sense. If the second rule is know your back, or third rule is know your backstop and beyond. If you're not shooting into a backstop, you inherit that, and they're going to come and they're going to issue you a summons, take you to jail, and the court's going to have its way. But this, I think this is, in my opinion, a huge mistake. I understand trying to address an issue, but this is commercial versus private. Commercial, absolutely. Put as many rules in there as you want. Somebody's making profit, they got to adhere to that. But commercial, people move out this area for that very reason. I think, I know there's some that don't like it, and that's fine. But you say you're going to implement this, you wouldn't have a building in the county that can hold everybody that's going to come and complain.
So maybe commercial is the point.
If they're making money, then I see no reason why they shouldn't have to adhere to the same rules and that a commercial or a for-profit entity would have to do. I mean, at that point, you're making money, you're responsible, you have an obligation to, but as far as a private citizen or myself and my sons come out and shoot or whatever, I don't see that as being feasible at all, but that's my opinion.
Do we address commercial gun ranges?
Yes.
Yes, there's a special exception required, and there are special requirements.
Okay.
I don't know the last time they've been reviewed and whether they should be, tweaked, but yeah. And I think there's indoor and outdoor, quite frankly, separate categories.
Well, I guess, all this sounds really good, and it all has basis, and it's understandable. But I guess, too, the particular incident that caused this situation, that particular person suffered during weeks of torment by this shooting, and probably some of it, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but suffered through weeks of shooting and numerous calls to the sheriff's department and law enforcement, and nothing was done. And I guess finally there was some comments about, well, if I go out there and find that they're complaining about shooting, what do I do? And the instruction was, well, you charge him with reckless handling of a firearm and he'll be prosecuted. So I guess everybody has rights, and everything that's said about the firearms here is correct. But when somebody has a very small piece of acreage and they're not being responsible, and somebody next door has a large piece of acreage and has to endure the dangers of being outside of their house, I don't know, there needs to be some assistance there and some reality, I guess, from law enforcement that addresses this, but this didn't happen, so this is why we have this here today.
Yeah. And it's the only way to get law enforcement out there, or, some kind of reasonable response to that kind of thing, is to say, look, you have to have a berm and you don't have it. It doesn't matter. At least you have something that is a doorway, like prohibiting a person from randomly shooting into a bank that's inadequate.
I'm not familiar with the details of what happened, but did bullets leave his property and onto hers? Did it strike her house or property in any way? Or is it just the gunshots that scared her to death?
I understand that his range was lined up with structures on her house, that if a bullet left the property, it was go directly towards her house. And she had a worker, farmer, agricultural worker on the property that, was concerned about, being there. And I understand too from a neighbor that a .50 caliber was being used at this particular place, and that, the berm that they had there, the structure they had was not sufficient to handle a .50 caliber. So, I don't know. I hate to see somebody get killed. I got firearms. I have 75 acres, and I have a mountain behind me that stops the bullets. And I'm not crazy about shooting 10,000 rounds or nothing, but it's a situation where a couple people make it bad for everybody else. Just like what you said, Tommy, about down there in Jericho with those people shooting, and I guess a bullet left the property, went through a house and hit a clock, right? Yeah, so, I mean, a foot difference and somebody would be dead, so, I mean, I don't know, people lack common sense, they lack a lot of things, so, I don't know.
There were consequences for that.
Yeah, there were.
After somebody's in the casket.
Yeah.
So, but I guess that's the way it is.
Who wants to get killed in order to be able to stop the shooting?
I mean, I completely understand what you're saying, but it's the same, it's almost like it's illegal to drink and drive. And, nothing happens, unfortunately, usually, until they get in an accident and hurt somebody else.
Those people, you had 9 people, how many people got charged?
9 people, because they couldn't determine which one shot it, so they charged them all.
Did they all plead guilty, or did they all get off?
They all pled guilty. One, that mentions his name, one, he didn't complete some training that he was supposed to do, and there's a capias issued out for him.
No charges on the other fellow?
I don't know about, I'm not familiar, I'm familiar, but I'm not familiar with.
I understand the other person agreed to relocate the orientation. It's a relatively small parcel, but relocate the orientation.
So I guess we do nothing with this?
Does parcel size play into this at all?
I'm sorry?
Parcel size. I mean, that's part of the problem in this situation, the parcel's so small.
I mean, if you go
How big
by
is that parcel?
a couple acres.
I think it's maybe 2 at max, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way, there's no way, I don't care how high his berm is, especially if you're shooting a 50,
Right.
that's gonna suffice to meet any standard whatsoever. That's the idiot clause, but,
That's reckless. It is.
it is. I mean,
it's against the law. It needs to be prosecuted.
But something has to, unfortunately, like Mr.
And
Hill.
there were some older, fully automatic weapons involved in this case that were legal.
Well, someone with a Class 3 license has to be there, so, I mean.
Apparently, that's what you're dealing with. Earlier discussions talked about regulating distance from roadways. You have some ability to do that. Potentially parcel size, you might have potential ability to do that. But I don't know if, for whatever reason, Art, thought those wouldn't be as appropriate for our community. Like I said, I can't speak for him.
I think too, if you start regulating the size, I mean, for instance, if it's a 2-acre lot, you say, well, those you cannot shoot, you can't plink on your.
Yeah, don't stop that plink.
On your property with whatever caliber gun. I think you're crossing over into constitutionality of the Second Amendment. That's it, and you would have a house full of folks present.
I agree with Mr. Settle, there's just a lot of loopholes in this too.
Maybe it can be. There was a lot of great points I thought brought up by the public.
So we do have, Rappahannock has one really odd thing on the record, hunting ordinance. What is it? Is you can't hunt within 300 feet of a road? You can't shoot. We're the only county that has that.
100 feet of a roadway.
It shows up in the game regulations. It used to show up.
Under 19, it's 100 feet of a roadway.
Yeah,
Is it 100 feet? Oh, 300 feet?
300 feet, isn't it?
Well, maybe everything's 100 yards. 100
yards.
You can't hunt or shoot.
I'm sorry?
You can't hunt or shoot within.
You're not supposed to shoot, because that's why a lot of the conservation officers will catch them.
We're the only county that has that in the state of Virginia.
Really?
Yep.
I did not know that, Alan.
Came back in,
Let's say that about all shooting.
that was put in
300 yards.
That's a
early
long,
80s.
long time ago.
Early 80s.
It might have been in the late 70s, I
There
believe.
was a lot of road hunting going on.
Oh,
the road.
yeah. It was put into
It was
the
Andy King.
specifically.
Been shooting at that. Do you think when it's fake deer on top of
North Post, that's a problem.
on top of the hay bale, right, as you came over the little green tree? Everybody's shooting at that thing, you know, it's so clearly not a real deer. What's on you? Getting out. Awesome.
Always wondered why the state or in control, the government's in control of deer until you hit one with your car, and then, hey, it's one here.
That's not theirs.
So what do you want to do with this? Madam Chair of the Planning Commission?
Well, I would like to move it forward. I mean, I know that there are lots of good arguments for not doing it, but honestly, having somebody shooting their gun at an inadequate berm, I mean, there's got to be a way of requiring berms if you have a small parcel.
Like Al has a big mountain behind him. You got a big mountain I shoot into.
I
don't
think
need
the
a berm.
county, I think the county should take the landfill down there and put a shooting range in it. Got great big high hills back there, isolated.
We're not shooting at the landfill, please.
That'd be a great place for a shooting range down there.
Sheriff used to have a range down there.
Then you prohibit shooting everywhere else.
Those requirements, buddy.
The county would have all the liability, and you can't sue the county, but they would never do anything.
Sovereign immunity?
Yeah.
Well, we still get to.
And let Tommy run it for a fee, you know, it's a county.
You know, I don't think it's an isolated problem. I really don't. I think that there are people who are shooting recklessly in the county that's endangering their neighbors. I mean, I think you can't sit here and do nothing as a board of supervisors for the planning commission.
I took almost as many phone calls as you did probably.
Yeah, man,
And I
totally.
listened, and I felt for this person. But what has been said, I just don't think this is gonna do anything, and I just don't think the sheriff's department, you know, can monitor this. I don't think they have the talent. I don't think you have the standards to build something. And why would anybody, if you go out and shoot anyway, why would you submit yourself to building this thing and drawing attention to yourself? You're not creating any safe harbors for yourself, so why would you comply with this?
No, and if you had the 2 acres and you didn't build the berm, you just shot, this wouldn't apply.
Right.
Right, yeah.
You know, so that's the flaw in I think in this logic is, and you can
But then
explain this to us.
The answer is not, oh, that's not doing anything.
But
The answer is, you require the berm to be there if you're.
But if I
shooting on 2 acres.
But if I shoot and the bullet's leaving my property, that's already not legal, is that correct? Or
Yeah.
that's not a county ordinance, that's not our job to regulate the safe discharge of a firearm, that's the state and law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, there's a statute that covers
Okay,
that.
so that was I mean, this person was shooting, the bullets are going through the berm, she phones law enforcement, every kind of law enforcement, endlessly. And the board of supervisors and the planning commission, and nothing gets done.
Well, we got to this point, so we can't say nothing.
No, I withdraw that.
Yeah.
I would think, I can't understand, I mean, if there were rounds that she had said, look, this came from whatever, that right there is proof positive, so then you you have the ability to do the reckless handling of a firearm. But, I mean, I'm uncomfortable because I hear shooting. I get it, but, you know, right now, there's no noise ordinance. It's not worse than music at 2 o'clock in the morning. It sucks. I'm not denying that, but if something reckless happens, then that in itself is evidence for the next step, which is, you know, the Virginia Code 18256.1.
So this might be a stupid question, but how is reckless defined in this case? So I am thinking, because we can't manage human behavior. We can't, right? So, and I am thinking about my neighbor. I had a neighbor years ago, and he would shoot from 12 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon until 7 p.m. No exaggeration. A friend of mine said, "Oh, Donna, don't worry about it. The price of ammunition is going up. He's going to stop." And I remember going out on my porch and just holding my phone out. I was like, you must be loaded, right? Because he went on and on and on. And when he first started, there was no berm. And it did make me uncomfortable, right? I had a little one running around in the woods, whatever. He has since moved away, and a new family has moved in, and this guy is former military. It's completely different. Berm, very responsible. He'll go out there, you know, a couple hours, whatever. It's completely different. So, and my first neighbor, what would have been reckless? Like, if bullet hit a tree in my yard, or
Handling a firearm in such a manner to endanger the life, limb, or property of any person. This seemingly simple phrase carries significant weight. It essentially means that even if there is not a specific ordinance prohibiting discharging a firearm in the backyard, you can still be charged with a crime if you act in the aforementioned way.
And property's included on that.
Okay.
It's vague and requires, you know, a law enforcement officer and ultimately a judge to consider the facts of the case and whether it is or is not. You know, every case may be different, whether it's Keir Plinkin in his backyard or...
No, I'm the poster child for small acreage plinkers. Yes, I have a small property. Yes, I plink. But I'm very careful.
I mean, I can understand the feeling completely that we should do something, because I completely understand it. I don't think this addresses reckless discharge of a firearm. All you have to do is take the berm down.
Yeah,
then you're outside of this.
It's criminal code basically, and that's not us.
It's not us.
It's not a zoning issue.
Yep.
So, Steph, I guess we're here to decide what to do with this thing.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do now, Steph?
Well, I think maybe we should explore further how we can provide some kind of safety other than a criminal complaint for people who live next door to folks who like to shoot their powerful weapons. I really feel like it's a moral obligation to provide some, standard for appropriate use that's not a criminal statute. I mean, to say, we do this all the time with zoning, right? We provide guidelines for what we consider to be in to meet the health and welfare and safety of our population. And if somebody is using a firearm in such a way that the neighbor is terrified to leave her house because the berm is insufficient, I just don't see how you can fail to address that. And again, I don't think it's that one neighbor. I think all of us have had, a moment of thinking, shit, I'm going to be killed by my neighbor.
I don't,
Maybe not everybody, but, maybe you haven't lived in the county long enough.
I would make the suggestion that we take what you have here, and I think we've shot, bad choice of word here. Bullet holes through all of this here, but, and go back and revisit it. I mean, the way this is written, and I don't know if it can be written, to cover,
I just don't think we're the first county to encounter this.
well, I think we send it back to Art, and he can maybe resurrect it or not. It may be DOA, in all honesty here, and it can't be resurrected, and it is what it is. But I guess in reality, everybody moving here from Northern Virginia and guns are not compatible. They're not used to it, and it's going to be something, either the sound or the use of it, we're going to hear more. But I think Gary's right that this is not ready for prime time, and maybe Art can do something with it, maybe he can't. But we talked about it.
Did anyone have any luck finding any similar ordinances elsewhere? I looked, I had no luck.
I did hear from a supervisor in Nelson County that they tried to put some sort of ordinance in their code, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court of Virginia, and it was, the Supreme Court found it not enforceable.
And that was, many localities handle firearms through noise ordinance. This was discussed earlier, and the noise ordinance somehow is intertwined in that Nelson County case. I can't remember how exactly, but.
What else do we have the right to regulate? I mean, we talked about shooting within a certain distance from a road, or were there other?
You did find that it's your chapter 117, hunting is like one section, and it is about that, and then it defines one definition. That's it. Yeah.
Is it 100 feet or 300 feet?
It's 100 yards.
100 yards.
Yeah.
100 yards.
You're
That would
right.
take care of the problem.
Like 300 feet.
Yeah.
You're right, 300 feet is 100 yards.
I know, we both were right. I thought, did you say 100 yards?
So we can try to, Art's real busy right now with his jury trials going on, but we can try to figure out what others have done. He has a listserv of local government attorneys, and I have access to listserv of other counties, and just put out their questions, how or whether others have had any success through various mechanisms to constrain this sort of activity without infringing on, rights. It's just, we're pretty unique as a community, but, not all that distinct from Highland, for example.
Fauquier County struggles with the same things we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I'd like to see what they're doing. Well, it makes it so we're putting it, so we're gonna read what.
Yeah.
So at this time, Gary, do we adjourn the supervisors?
You can stick around and look at this table, I guess.
I'll put forward a motion that we adjourn the Board of Supervisors August meeting that was continued to tonight.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And planning commission.
More table space for us.
Make the motion to adjourn.
A motion that we adjourn.
Any second? And any discussion?
Who gave us these pens? Thank you.
I
Who
did.
seconded? Who
Thank you.
seconded?
Yeah.
Got 2 seconds.
No.